How nutrients and water behave in peat soils is a critical question for farming in Waikato, as a large area of farmland in the region, around 75,000 hectares, is classified as peat soil. Farmer-led research has shown that it's possible to identify different types of peat soils and predict how they will behave. The result will be better management of the timing, location and extent of effluent irrigation. Phil Irvine of DAIRYNZ explains.
About 5 or 6 years ago, DAIRYNZ had an effluent field day in this area, and it came up during the conversation that peat was high risk for applying effluent. If your soils are rated as high risk, it has a few implications. The biggest one is probably the amount of storage you need during wet conditions where you can't put effluent on. We facilitated a meeting of farmers that also had interest in this topic and a whole lot of companies and rural professionals that had expertise in this area. This wider group of farmers have got together and we've secured the largest funder is MPI through the Sustainable Farming Fund. DAIRYNZ also is a significant funder, and also we got support from Waikato Regional Council and Balance Agri-Nutrients, which is good. So it's a teamwork, and we've secured Ag-Research and Landcare to do the research work for us. The research has come in and given us an idea what's happening underground and you know, in terms of the leaching, so both in lysimeters and in terms of drainage work coming out of paddocks, out of the drains. It's shown us that one, on the nitrogen front, the leaching under the consolidated peat, it's pretty much standard, pretty similar to mineral soils and reasonably low levels. And the good news is the raw peat, it doesn't leach much at all. It's really just soaking it all up. So the very little nitrogen coming out of the raw peat soils. Secondly, in terms of phosphate, there's very little phosphate being leached out of the consolidated developed peat. But surprisingly, to some extent, and one thing we need to keep working on, and perhaps farmers need to respond to, we are seeing a significant amount of phosphate being leaked out of the raw peat soil. So that's something that the science has shown us, and something that we in the industry and farmers will need to respond to. And I think you'll see farmers like Harry is doing things already, putting phosphate on more regularly instead of 1 dose a year, more regularly, and the types of phosphate he's putting on is one that is not leached as readily. So there's some good responses from it. In terms of the E. coli and pathogens, so far the results have shown that both the developed and undeveloped peats have been similar. I think we do need another year of work in that regard. So that's going to, in a year's time, we'll know a lot more about the response to E. coli and pathogens.
What we have going on here is just shallow surface drain being cleaned out, which is just standard good practice on peat farms. It's just trying to clear the water away from the pastures so that the pastures can be, get the roots down deeper and have more vigorous, healthier pastures. In terms of the trial, I'm now more aware of putting on lower rates of nitrogen, no more than 25 k's of N at any one time. So, more into the little and often type management as opposed to bigger hits, and not putting on so much nitrogen fertiliser through the late winter, spring period.
If your effluent area was classed as high risk, how much bigger would it have to be?
If the whole effluent area was high risk, the pond would have to be nearly 3 times bigger than this.
Wow.
Certainly there's a way better understanding of the way nutrients move through the soil, and it's increased my awareness of, I guess, how nutrients end up in the Waikato River, which is where all of the Waikato nutrients do end up. Other benefits that have come out of it is that I've now got involved with the Dairy Environment Leaders Group, so that's, I guess, a new interest for me, and it's certainly provided extra stimulation in thinking about what things are happening going forward.
Yeah, because it's interesting, it's the same blackness as my soil.
Yeah. We definitely need storage. We've just built some structures for storage at our east side dairy, which is fully on peat, and we've expanded the storage for our rotary dairy. It's possible we'll have to even build more just because of the soil type. We can't get away from the fact that nutrients are going through it.
Quite wet.
Yeah.
Not quite at water table yet, but
can
Oh,
actually
no.
make water run out of it, can't you?
Oh, yeah, the water coming out of there.
We've learnt about how we apply phosphate and what type of phosphate we put on. We've learnt that our nitrogen gets bound up really easily. We don't want to send nitrogen down the drain either. So we've had those interesting discussions of how we go forward. We're sort of having a better understanding of what is happening.
This is a brilliant bit of farmer Kiwi ingenuity. A local farmer developed this concept. This will be buried into the ground to this level. Yeah. And so this will give you an easy measure of how deep or how high the water table is. If the water table is really high, then it's a no-no. You don't irrigate because the nutrients, it's too easy for them to get to the water. But if it's right down low, it's quite dry, then you can put your effluent on, no problem. Part of this project was to get a tool to help farmers physically think through the risk status of their soil. So we are about to launch that to farmers. There's a few hoops to jump through. The water table thing and then the soil structure thing does mean that probably quite a lot of peats are still going to be high risk. But we believe by understanding the structure, the water table issues, then there's certainly going to be some soils that on a map, at face value, are classed as high risk that perhaps aren't high risk. So that'll be good. The project would really like to have this information feed into Overseer, but we need to get one more year under the belt in terms of results, and then we'll be putting that information forward, and hopefully we can get that into Overseer.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.